You ever hit rock bottom so hard that the absurd starts to look reasonable? That's where I was when I found the ad. I hadn't eaten in 2 days. My phone was a few hours from getting shut off. Rent was long overdue. And I was sleeping in the back of my car in a Walmart parking lot, hugging my backpack like it might walk away if I let go. I saw the listing on a message board. Not even a legit job site. Just a janky forum with a black background and neon green text. It looked like something out of the 90s, buried between conspiracy threads and people asking if they'd been abducted by aliens. There it was. Night security needed. Immediate start. $2,500 a week. No experience necessary. Must follow instructions. No company name. No job description. Just that. I clicked it because I had nothing else to click. The post linked to a form with basic stuff. Name, birth date, blood type. That one gave me pause, but I filled it out anyway. I would have sold a kidney at that point if someone asked nicely. Less than an hour later, I got the call. The voice on the other end was strange. Not in what he said. He spoke clearly enough, but how he said it. Flat, toneless, like he was reading from inside a dream. He didn't ask for an interview, didn't verify my information. He just told me the job was mine and that orientation would begin at 10 p.m. sharp. Then he gave me an address and hung up. No email, no confirmation, just an address in the middle of nowhere. If I were in a better place mentally, I would have ignored it. But I wasn't. So I borrowed gas money from a guy I used to know, promised I would pay him back by the end of the week, and drove out there. The address led me down a long dirt road through dense trees. No lights, no signs, just miles of forest. Eventually, I came to a concrete building, half sunken into the ground, with a single steel door and a keypad. The building looked less like a workplace and more like a bunker or a tomb. The keypad lit up when I got close. I was about to knock when the door clicked open by itself, slow and deliberate, as if it had been expecting me. A man stood on the other side, tall, pale, dressed in a grey uniform with no badge, no name, no insignia, just grey. He looked at me like someone looks at a chair, functional or unimportant. "You're the new hire," he said. His voice matched the one from the phone. "Come with me. Orientation begins now." I followed him down a corridor that felt far too narrow for how wide it looked. The walls were lined with pipes that groaned every few seconds, like something massive was breathing through them. I asked what the job actually was. "You're here to watch," he said, "and to follow the rules." Before I could ask what that meant, We arrived at a small room that smelled like bleach and copper. It had a desk, 2 folding chairs, and a corkboard pinned with photos I couldn't make out. The lighting buzzed overhead like it was shorting out, and somewhere in the distance, something metal clanked against something hollow. The man handed me a thick folder. No branding, no explanation, just a sticker on the front that read, "Rules for Night Watch, Sector Alpha." The rules inside were typed in Courier font, double spaced, with red ink notes in the margins. Some circled, others violently scratched out. The very first page had a warning at the top. Failure to adhere to the following instructions may result in death, mutilation, dissolution, or other outcomes considered worse. I laughed. I didn't mean to, it just slipped out. But the man didn't. "Read," he said. "Memorize what you can. You start in 2 hours." I sat down. I flipped the page, and that's when I started to realize what I had walked into. The rules were, I don't know what word to use, terrifying, insane. They were too specific to be fake. They read like someone had seen something, or maybe survived it, and now he tried his best to trap it in language. But language was failing. Here's a few. Rule 4. If you hear laughter coming from the northeast hallway between 1:30 and 1:50 a.m., do not investigate. Do not respond. The thing that laughs can speak, but it has never learned to lie. Do not let it speak a second sentence. Rule 6. At exactly 2:13 a.m., the backup generators will turn on. This is normal. You are not allowed to watch the monitors during this time. Cover your eyes until the humming stops. Rule 8. Should you see a figure in the break room after 3 a.m., wait until it finishes drinking from the vending machine. Do not address it. If it turns around, scream. That's the only part it understands. And then this one. Rule 11. You may see a version of yourself walking past the observation glass. If it's limping, it's safe to follow. If it waves at you, it's trying to replace you. Do not wave back. Do not look away until it disappears. There were 23 rules in total, though 3 were blacked out entirely, and 5 had red pen corrections in the margins like update, do not follow the limper, error in identification. I closed the folder, my heart going a mile a minute. Is this real? The man just stared at me. Where am I? I asked. You're at your job, he said. This is your station. I tried to leave, but the hallway we came from was gone. Not blocked, but gone. Just a wall now, smooth and unbroken. The man led me through another door, thick, heavy, industrial, and into the security office. The office was cold. There were no windows, just concrete walls, humming monitors and 2 swivel chairs. The screens showed black and white surveillance feeds. Hallways that seemed too long. Rooms that pulsed at the edges, like the footage was underwater. One monitor just showed a cage with no bars. Just a field of static that moved like it was breathing. "This is your post," he said. "You sit here. You watch. You follow the rules. Your shift ends at 6. Then he handed me a slip of paper. It had my name on it. And below my name, "Shift starts 12 a.m. Shift ends 6 a.m. Clearance level temporary. Pending outcome." "What outcome?" I asked. He looked at the monitors for a long time, then back at me. "If the intercom crackles," he said slowly, "but no one speaks, unplug it immediately. And do not look at the speaker while it crackles, not even for a second." Then he turned and walked out. The door sealed behind him with a hiss. I just sat down. I stared at the monitors. I stared at the clock. It's 12:06 a.m. now. There's a tapping coming from behind the west wall. The rules say not to acknowledge it. It's not trying to get in. It's trying to get out. I'm doing everything I can not to turn my head. Because if this is real, and God help me if it's real, then I'm not alone down here. And I don't think it knows I'm watching yet. It's 12:43 a.m. The tapping stopped 20 minutes ago, but I can still feel it. Not in the walls, but inside me. Like it left an imprint somewhere deep inside my chest. A phantom vibration that won't let go. I haven't moved from this chair. I haven't spoken. Haven't even cleared my throat. I don't know if sound draws them, but I'm not going to be the idiot that finds out. I just watch the monitors, one by one, cycling through the endless black and white corridors. Nothing moves, or at least not exactly. The footage shifts, like the building is breathing behind my back. Some halls look longer than they did a few minutes ago. One of the elevators shows a floor number that doesn't exist. It stays there for a while, flickering, then disappears completely like it never existed. That screen has been dark since. And then there's camera 9. It's been showing a break room. Empty, sterile, lit by a buzzing fluorescent light that swings ever so slightly, like someone just walked through. There's a vending machine on the left side of the frame. I keep checking the rules about it. Should you see a figure in the break room after 3 a.m. But it's not 3 a.m. Not yet. Still, I can't shake the feeling that the room is watching me back. Like, if I stare too long, something will notice. 1:10 a.m. The lights flicker once, and I freeze. Rule 7 comes screaming back into my mind. At 2:46 a.m., the lights will flicker once. Stand completely still. Do not blink. But this isn't 2:46. My hand moves to the rule sheet, and I double check. It clearly says 2:46. So, why now? I don't move. I don't blink. I just sit perfectly still, waiting. Then, the lights return. A second passes. Then another. Nothing. I start to exhale, but then the intercom crackles. Not a voice, just static, wet and low, like something breathing through shredded vocal cords. The speaker above my head ticks, like it's trying to unjam itself. I stare at it. Then I remember what he said. If the intercom crackles but no one speaks, unplug it. Immediately. Do not look at the speaker. I tear my eyes away and practically dive for the wire under the console. I yank the plug out of the wall with so much force I fall onto my side. The static dies instantly. I stay on the floor, breathing through my teeth, staring up at the monitors. For a moment, they all go dark. Then they come back. Camera 3 now shows the hallway directly outside the security room. The feed wasn't showing that before. I would have remembered. And there's someone standing at the door. They are facing away from the camera, hunched, wearing the same grey uniform the man from earlier had. But this figure is taller, too tall, and their hands hang below their knees, like ropey strands of wet muscle. One hand is pressed flat against the door. My door. I don't move. I don't even breathe. The figure doesn't knock, doesn't turn around. It just stands there, slowly pressing its face against the steel, like it's smelling me through the metal. Something leaks from under the door. A dark, syrupy drip. It pools around the bottom of the frame. Then, just as silently, the figure turns away and walks. But it doesn't move, it just shifts. Like each frame of the camera feed was replaced with a new position. 1 second it's there, the next it's 15 feet down the hallway, facing the wall. Then it's gone. I check the time. 1:23 a.m. I should have never taken this job. The silence creeps back in. Time warps in this place. I keep blinking and seeing minutes disappear. On the monitors, hallways vanish. Doors open and close on their own. I catch flashes of movement on the edge of the screens. Just shadows sliding across the walls like they're part of the paint. At 1:38 a.m., something appears on camera 12. It's a figure, another one, sitting in a chair in what looks like a forgotten office. Head tilted back, mouth wide open. I watch for a full minute before I realize what's wrong. It's me. Not just similar, exactly me. Same shirt, same cheap shoes, same cut on the knuckle from when I hit my steering wheel a few days ago. I lean in, and the figure blinks. Then it smiles. I jump back so fast I nearly knock the chair over. My heart's a war drum in my chest. I remember Rule 9. You may see another version of yourself watching the monitors. If he smiles, leave the room and recite the emergency dismissal protocol. I don't know the emergency dismissal protocol. No one gave it to me. I quickly check the folder, flipping through with shaking hands, and find a single page at the back, taped shut. I rip it open. Emergency dismissal protocol. Redacted. In the event of cognitive breach, repeat the phrase, I am the observer, not the observed, until the mirror image dissolves. Cover all reflective surfaces. Do not breathe in sync with the other. Do not respond to its questions. If it begins to count backward, shut off the power. The figure on the monitor raises one hand and begins to wave. I grab the remote from the desk and shut off the feed. The screen goes black. I whisper the phrase over and over. I am the observer, not the observed. Something taps on the wall again. This time, it's closer, higher up, near the ceiling. I don't look. 2 a.m. The vending machine in the break room suddenly lights up. A single can falls from its rack and rolls slowly across the floor. No one's there to take it. I blink and the can is gone. The chair in that room is now facing the camera. I have been waiting. I've been obeying. But the rules are shifting. The times are off. The things behind the walls are getting bold. I don't think this is just a test of survival. I think this building is watching me back. And it's starting to remember my name. It's 4:11 a.m. now. The rules are bleeding. I don't mean metaphorically. I mean the folder on the desk. My only anchor in this place is leaking. Thick, dark fluid drips from the bottom edge, soaking into the desk and pooling onto the floor like ink mixed with oil. I flipped through it in a panic minutes ago, only to find the words on the pages distorting, curling in on themselves. Letters replacing letters. Rule 4 now reads, if you hear laughter from inside yourself, you're already too late. I didn't write that. Someone or something has been rewriting the rules. The clock above the monitor stopped ticking. It's frozen at 3:33 a.m. But my watch says otherwise. I have lost time. I've lost a lot. And I think I'm slowly losing myself. Every time I look into the monitors, I see things that don't make sense anymore. The break room is now filled with chairs stacked impossibly high, ceiling to floor, all facing outward like they are guarding something. Camera 6 shows a stairwell that spirals both up and down, infinitely, endlessly, as if the building has no floor or ceiling anymore. And then there's camera 3. It still shows the hallway outside my room. The figure is back. Except now, it's not at the door. It's behind me. On the screen, I can see myself, sitting at the desk, frozen in fear. And standing just inches behind, the figure stretches into the ceiling like a tower of bone and flesh, stitched into reality by mistake. Its head bends in half to avoid hitting the tiles, and it's whispering something I can't hear. I spin around, but there's nothing there. I look back at the screen. Still there. But I'm not on the monitor anymore. There's just the creature, alone in the chair. And it's watching me. I want to scream, but I know better now. Rule 18 says, do not scream after 4 a.m. It alerts the ones that are listening beneath. I whisper instead. The emergency protocol. The observer mantra. I hum it like a lullaby through gritted teeth. I am the observer, not the observed. I shut off the monitor, and there's silence again. And then something worse. The sound of breathing. Not human, not even animal, just wet, slow, like lungs that forgot how to breathe, were trying to remember through rotten cloth. It's coming from inside the walls, from the vents, from inside my room. I back toward the door, hand on the emergency keycard they gave me. The key that was only to be used if the doors begin melting. I don't know what that means, but right now the steel panel beside me is dripping like wax. So I run. The hallway is warped, longer, wider. The lights flicker in rhythmic pulses like a heartbeat. The floor beneath me hums with static energy that makes the fillings in my teeth buzz. I don't know where I'm going. I don't think direction exists anymore. Every door I pass looks the same, yet wrong. Like copied from a memory that didn't belong to me. Eventually, I find a staircase. I take it. Up, down, I am not even sure. At the bottom, or maybe the top, I find a door I've never seen before. Unmarked, old, wood, no keypad, no handle, just a keyhole. And the key in my hand fits. When the door swings open, I am not in a hallway anymore. I am in a room filled with mirrors, hundreds of them. Every surface reflects me, and not me. Some versions are older, some younger. Some are smiling, some are screaming, and some are looking behind me. I don't dare to turn around. I walk forward, slowly. My reflection distorts as I pass, melting, flickering. Some are twitching like broken footage. And one of them presses its face against the glass, mouth moving soundlessly. I stop, and so does it. We stare at each other. It raises a finger and draws something on the other side of the mirror, backward from my view. It's a word. Stay. Then it slams its forehead against the glass, and the mirror cracks. All of them do. A sound erupts behind me like 1,000 clocks breaking at once, and a low moan follows, rising to a pitch that makes my teeth ache. Something is coming, and it doesn't want me to leave. I run again. No rules anymore, just instinct. I run until my lungs feel like they're tearing, until the walls blur past me, until I see it. The exit, the original steel door, the one I came through when this all began. It's open now, just barely. And on the other side is darkness, but it's a normal darkness. Night, cold air, wind, the real world. I don't look back. I don't even breathe until I've crossed the threshold. And just like that, I'm outside. The bunker is gone. Behind me, only trees. No building, no keypad, nothing. Just silence. And it's morning now. I don't know how. I sit on the hood of my car and wait until the sun rises. When I check my phone, I have a new message. Unknown number. Shift complete. Well done. We'll be in touch. I delete it. I throw the phone into the woods and just drive home. Or what I think is home. But something followed me. I see it in reflections, briefly. A tall figure with hands that hang too low. I hear static when the radio's off. I haven't slept in days because I hear tapping behind the walls of my apartment. I know what they're going to do. They'll offer another job. to someone else. The rules will be rewritten. The halls will change shape. The monsters will wear new faces. But they'll always need someone to watch. Someone like me. Someone desperate enough to say yes. And when they do, when they send you the folder, don't read the rules. Burn them. I have always believed that knowledge is the highest pursuit. That no question should be left unanswered, and no boundary left unexplored. That was why I chose to walk the path of science. Not out of arrogance, but out of necessity. Humanity has always reached toward the unknown, clawing for answers in the dark, trying to make sense of its own existence. We have mapped the heavens, charted the atoms, split them apart and reassembled them in forms never seen in nature. We have cured diseases, created artificial intelligence, and sent our machines beyond the reaches of our own solar system. And yet, one question remains unanswered. One question that has lingered in the minds of humanity since the first primitive beings gazed up at the sky with wonder and fear. Is there a God? Not as a concept, not as a story, but as a real tangible force. Something that could be measured, tested and observed. The idea had been dismissed by the scientific community for centuries. God was a matter of faith, they said, not science. But faith alone was not enough for me. If something as vast and omnipotent as a creator existed, then it had to leave behind evidence of its presence. Something hidden in the fundamental fabric of reality. And if there was evidence, then it could be found. Thus, the God Project was born. The project began with 5 of us. We were all outcasts in one way or another. Scientists and thinkers who had spent their lives standing at the edge of what was known, staring into the abyss beyond. Some of us came from traditional fields, while others had abandoned conventional science altogether, in pursuit of something greater. We had nothing in common, except for the fact that none of us could accept the idea of an unknowable universe. Marianne was the first to join me, a neuroscientist by trade. She had spent years studying the nature of human consciousness, searching for a scientific explanation for spirituality. She believed that the mind was more than just an organ, that consciousness itself might be a remnant of something beyond our understanding, perhaps even a fragment of the divine. Her research had led her to study near-death experiences, hallucinations, and religious visions. She had interviewed monks, shamans, and mystics, mapping their altered states of perception and searching for patterns in their experiences. Every culture speaks of visions, she once told me, of something beyond reality. What if they are not hallucinating? What if they are glimpsing something real, something just beyond our reach? To Marianne, our research was the logical next step. If there was something greater than us, she wanted to understand it, not worship it. Victor was a man of logic, numbers and data. He had little patience for mysticism, little interest in philosophy. To him, the world was nothing more than a vast computational system. A program running on an underlying set of rules that we had yet to fully understand. He was convinced that reality was a simulation, not as a metaphor but as a literal artificial construct, created by an unknown force. We already know the universe follows mathematical laws, he had once argued. That means it has structure, and structure implies a creator. If we can trace the code back to its source, we'll find whoever or whatever wrote it. His obsession had made him an outcast among his peers, but in the God Project, he had found purpose. He was the one who designed our algorithms, built our models, and searched for patterns in the chaos. To Victor, this wasn't a search for a deity. It was a search for the ultimate programmer. Father Clawfield was an anomaly, a priest turned scholar. He had spent decades preaching the word of God, until something changed. He never spoke of why he left the church, only that one day he had simply walked away. He had abandoned his congregation, his faith, and everything he had once believed in. But even in his absence, he could not let go of the question that haunted him. If there is a God, he asked me, then why is he silent? Clawfield did not seek to prove God's existence. He already believed. What he sought was understanding. Why had God hidden himself? Why did he allow suffering, chaos, and evil to flourish in his creation? The church had no answers for him. But science might. He was the one who provided us with ancient texts, scriptures, and forgotten religious doctrines. He was the one who recognized patterns where we saw only noise. And he was the one who gave names to the things we could not explain. If you find him, he once whispered to me, what will you ask? I never had an answer. Oliver Kane was a man of machines. He was the one who took our theories and turned them into reality, designing the systems, the sensors, and the instruments that made our research possible. Unlike the rest of us, he had no personal stake in the search. He did not believe in God. He did not believe in simulations. And he did not care for the philosophical implications of what we were doing. I build things, he told me once. I don't care what you find. I just want to see if it's possible. In many ways, Cain was the most dangerous among us. He had no fear, no hesitation. If the experiment demanded we push further, he would push without question. He was the reason we succeeded. For years we worked in secrecy. We studied the anomalies, the strange fluctuations in reality that no known physics could explain. We ran endless simulations, searching for patterns hidden in the noise. We even scoured ancient texts, looking for descriptions of divine manifestations that matched our findings. And then we built the conduit array. It was a machine unlike anything that had ever existed. A vast network of sensors, quantum computers, and neural interfaces, designed to detect and amplify the anomalies we had found. If there was something beyond reality, something outside the physical laws of the universe, the conduit would find it. And it did. At first, the signals were weak, faint disturbances in the cosmic microwave background radiation, particles behaving in ways that defied every known law of physics. But as we refined the array, the signals became clearer. Something was there. Something vast. And now we had to decide whether to go further. Honestly, we should have stopped the moment we realized something was watching us. The rational part of me, the scientist, the skeptic, wanted to believe that what we had discovered was just another unknown force of nature. Something to be studied, understood, categorized. But deep down, I knew better. It wasn't just an anomaly. It wasn't just some undiscovered law of physics. It was aware. At first, the signal was faint, buried in cosmic radiation, indistinguishable from the background hum of the universe. But as we refined the conduit array, the noise began to take shape. What at once seemed like static interference resolved into something structured. We had all expected patterns, mathematics, sequences, something akin to the language of the cosmos. But what we found instead was something else entirely. Victor was the first to recognize it. He had been running tests late into the night, as he always did, feeding the data through different models, searching for recognizable structures. I remember the moment he called us all in. It was nearly 2 a.m, and I had been lying in my cot, half dreaming of graphs and code when the lab's emergency alert buzzed against my wrist. By the time I stumbled into the main lab, still groggy, the others were already gathered around Victor's monitor. He was playing the signal back through the lab speakers. But at first I didn't understand what I was hearing. It was low, almost imperceptible. A deep resonance that made my stomach churn. It wasn't until he adjusted the output, amplifying the frequency, that I realized it was a voice. Not a human voice, not anything we could compare to speech. It was something vibrating at the edge of perception, something that felt like it bypassed the ears entirely, pressing itself directly into the mind. We all stood in silence as it played, each of us experiencing something different. I felt a creeping sensation along my spine. It was like a phantom hand brushing against my skin. Marianne swayed on her feet. She was clutching the edge of the desk for support. Father Clawfield just closed his eyes. His lips were moving in silent prayer. Only Victor seemed unaffected. His fingers were flying over the keyboard as he ran the sound through various filters. Then, beneath the deep, thrumming noise, something shifted. A crackling distortion. And Then,
Listen.
the word rang through the lab, impossibly clear. The sound was not human, and yet we understood it. Not through translation, not through computation, but through something else entirely. Marianne flinched as if struck. Clawfield inhaled sharply. We had spent years searching for proof, hoping for any sign of something beyond our understanding. And now, something had spoken back. We played the recording over and over, analyzing the waveform, dissecting the acoustics. Victor swore it was structured, but it didn't follow any linguistic pattern we recognized. It wasn't just speech, it was imposed onto us, an intrusion into the mind. Marianne was the first to notice the dreams. She came into the lab one morning, pale and shaking, her hands trembling as she tried to pour herself a cup of coffee. The liquid sloshed over the rim, staining the table in dark rivulets. When I asked her what was wrong, she looked at me as if she didn't recognize me for a moment. Then she whispered, "I saw it." When she tried to explain, her voice wavered. It wasn't a dream, not exactly. More like a presence, vast and endless, pressing against the edges of her mind. It had no form, no shape, but it was there, watching. At first, I dismissed it as stress. We had all been pushing ourselves too hard, working long hours with little rest. But then Victor admitted he had been experiencing the same thing. His was different though. Less of a presence and more of a feeling. An unbearable sense of being observed. As if something was waiting, just beyond the veil of perception, watching through his own eyes. Clawfield refused to speak of what he had seen, but he looked worse than any of us. His skin was pallid, dark rings forming beneath his eyes. He had stopped sleeping entirely, spending his nights reading over old religious texts, searching for something, though he never told us what. Even Oliver, who had never believed in any of it, began acting strangely. One evening as I entered the lab, I found him sitting alone in the dark, staring at the screen, the signal still playing on loop. His hands were clenched into fists, his knuckles white. When I asked him if he was all right, he turned to me with an expression I had never seen before. Something between confusion and dread. "It knows my name," he said. I didn't ask what he meant. Despite the growing unease, none of us could walk away. We were too close. The signal had become clearer, the words more distinct.
Come closer. Do you understand? I am waiting.
Those words burrowed into our minds, staying with us even when the machines were off. It was no longer just something we listened to. It was something we felt. Then, one night, Victor made the decision that changed everything. "We need to communicate back," he said. Oliver was the first to object. That's insane. We have no idea what that thing is. We are scientists," Victor interrupted. This is the greatest discovery in human history. If something is out there and it's speaking to us, we need to speak back. Despite my unease, I agreed. We all did eventually. Curiosity, obsession, madness. Whatever it was, it had its hook in us. So, we typed out our first message. Who are you? A long silence followed. The signal wavered, but then responded.
You are asking.
Victor's fingers hovered over the keyboard. What do you want?
To be known.
A chill crept over my skin. Marianne looked at me, her face pale. Oliver just leaned forward and typed, "What are you?" The response was immediate.
What are you?
Oliver hesitated. Victor, his voice tight, murmured, "It's mimicking us." Then he carefully typed, "We are human. We are researchers. We seek understanding." A pause. Then,
Understanding is not knowing.
those words unsettled me in a way I couldn't explain. My stomach just felt hollow. Marianne whispered, "Ask where it comes from." So Victor typed, "Where are you?" Another long pause. The signal wavered.
Near.
My breath hitched. Victor hesitated before typing, "Where exactly?" Then the screen flickered.
Closer.
A sharp, high-pitched whine filled the speakers. Not loud, but piercing. For a moment, I swore I could hear breathing, slow and deep, just beyond the static. Victor's hands trembled as he typed out one last message. "Are you alone?" The response came so quickly. It was as if it had been waiting for that question.
Are you?
A suffocating stillness settled over the room. And for the first time, I felt watched. The silence had deepened into something oppressive, suffocating. Something that felt as though it was pressing in on all sides, coiling around us like an invisible serpent. The walls no longer seemed like solid objects. They bent, warped in my vision, as though they were shifting, alive, breathing with a slow, deliberate exhale. The room was still, but it was too still. Victor had stopped typing. His fingers hovered over the keys, trembling slightly. But not from fear. No, there was something else in his eyes now. Something distant. Something absent. His gaze was locked onto the monitor. His pupils dilated, as though trying to peer into something that wasn't meant to be seen. His breath came slowly, deeply, as if every inhale was a struggle against the growing weight of something wrong, something unspeakable pressing against the edges of his consciousness. The air felt thick, almost vicious, and it clung to me. I could hear my own heartbeat, thudding too loudly in my chest, and with every beat, I felt the room close in around me. I glanced over at Marianne. Her face was pale, but her eyes weren't wide with terror anymore. She was staring at the floor, at nothing at all, as if she couldn't see anything anymore. She was staring, lost, like she had stepped out of the world we knew and into something else entirely. It was Father Clawfield who broke the silence, his voice barely a whisper. "This isn't right. It's not supposed to be like this." His fingers clutched the edge of his seat, knuckles wide, as if holding onto something, anything that would anchor him to reality. But reality was already slipping away, wasn't it? I started, but the words seemed hollow, empty in my mouth. I couldn't even finish the thought. The pressure, the tension in the room was too much. The room had become a pressure cooker, the lid threatening to blow off at any moment. I glanced again at the screen. The letters on it seemed to breathe, shifting in and out of focus, warping like ripples across a dark pond. It was as though the question on the screen, the words themselves, were not written in human language at all, but some ancient, incomprehensible code.
What do you want?
The question came again. It was no longer a question, really. It was more of a taunt. The words pulsed in the air, like a heartbeat, but a heartbeat that didn't belong to anything human. The hum in the speakers had faded into the background, but the feeling, the presence lingered, deep and unshakable. Victor didn't move. He was still, too still. His eyes were locked onto the screen, but I couldn't tell if he even saw it anymore. It was as though he was gazing into something, or at something that existed outside of our understanding. "Victor?" I said, my voice hoarse, struggling to break through the silence. But it didn't matter. He didn't react. He was lost in something. Something was inside him now. I turned to look at Marianne, my heart sinking in my chest. She wasn't even breathing. Her body had frozen, her pupils fixed, her gaze blank. I tried to call her name again, but she didn't respond. She couldn't hear me. She couldn't hear any of us. The tension in the room grew unbearable, pressing down on me with an almost physical weight. I could hear Father Clawfield whispering to himself, but his voice was soft, a chant under his breath that was nothing like prayer. The static on the speakers had returned, but it was different now. It wasn't just noise. It was more like presence, a hum that crawled inside your skull, burrowing deep into your thoughts. I felt the madness creeping in, slowly, steadily. Victor's fingers twitched on the keys, and I saw the letters come up once more.
Why do you ask?
It wasn't an answer. It was an extension of the question. Another push. A prod deeper into the darkness. The silence pressed in on all sides, as if the room itself was swallowing us whole. And then, finally, the words came again.
You don't know what you are asking.
The voice in my head, It wasn't a voice I could hear with my ears. It was deeper than that. It was everywhere. It was inside me, a whisper in my thoughts, an idea that didn't belong, but now I couldn't think without it. It had burrowed its way in, like a seed planted in the darkest corner of my mind. Father Clawfield muttered something under his breath, but the words didn't make sense. It's not real. I turned to look at him, but his face was pale, his eyes wide, his hands shaking violently. His breathing was ragged, like he was choking on something he couldn't name. His gaze was unfocused, his mind racing, spinning out of control. The silence between the words felt like it was alive. It was a pressure, a weight, dragging us under. It was the space between breaths, between thoughts, where nothing was certain and everything was fragile. And then, finally, after what felt like an eternity of waiting, the next words appeared.
You can't stop it.
The words crawled across the screen, slow and deliberate, like they were savoring the moment. The air in the room grew colder, a chill creeping into my bones. I could feel my fingers going numb, my skin tingling with an eerie sensation that had no place in this world. The screen flickered again, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw something shift within it, something moving, something that didn't belong. And then, just as quickly as the tension had arrived, it cracked. The room seemed to shudder, like a great wave of dread crashing over us, suffocating us in its weight. The walls seemed to bend and flex, shifting ever so slightly, as if they were made of something other. I could hear Marianne's breathing now. It wasn't steady. It wasn't even human. It was broken. Victor moved, his fingers scraping across the keys as if trying to break free from some invisible chain that had bound him. His face was twisted, his expression one of confusion and panic. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Father Clawfield stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor in a jarring, unnatural sound. His eyes darted around the room as if something were about to leap from the shadows. "We shouldn't have done this," he whispered, his voice cracked with panic. "We shouldn't have asked." But it was too late. I looked back at the screen, my breath coming in shallow gasps. The words weren't on the screen anymore. There was nothing there. Only an empty space. A void. And in that void, I felt it. A presence. Something incomprehensible. Something so far beyond anything we could understand that the very act of trying to comprehend it was pushing us to the edge of our sanity. The silence returned. But it wasn't just silence anymore. It was louder now. It was the sound of a world about to unravel. The sound of something far too vast and old, and alien to ever be understood, pushing against the thin membrane of our fragile reality. We had opened the door, but we hadn't asked to see what was on the other side, and now it was too late. All we had left was the silence, and the knowledge that we would never escape it. Some jobs are made for people who don't want to be found. At least, that's how they pitched it to me. A 6-week contract in the high Arctic, manning an old relay station that was once used for military communications, and now supposedly used for scientific data transfers. It's a cold, quiet post in the middle of nowhere. Full pay up front, no cell signal or Wi-Fi, and most importantly, no people. I signed before I even finished reading the offer. It wasn't that I needed the money, though I did. It wasn't even about the escape, at least not entirely. It was about the silence, about wiping everything clean for a little while, about the idea that you could go somewhere so empty that even your own thoughts got tired of following you. That was the promise of Station 126B, and for the first while, it delivered. I arrived by helicopter, a military green bird that touched down for no more than 60 seconds before leaving me and my cargo behind. The pilot didn't say a word. He didn't have to. It was nothing but white in every direction. Endless snow and bruised sky, the sun low and pale, casting long, weak shadows across the ice. The wind blew low and steady, not screaming, just present, like breath from some ancient sleeping thing. The relay station itself sat low against the horizon, a rusted rectangle of steel and old bolts, half swallowed by snowdrifts. Beside it, rising from the ice like a crooked spine, stood the relay tower. Metal ribs, frostbitten cables, a blinking red light at the top, faint in the grey daylight. There was no road, no flag, no nameplate, just a door. Inside, the station was warmer, but only just. The main room was a tight, functional space. Steel walls, bolted furniture, and a white desk, cluttered with old papers and analog equipment. A worn-out cot occupied the back corner, beneath a narrow porthole window. There were no signs of the previous occupant. No personal items, not even a coffee mug. There was, however, a binder. It was black, heavy, and labeled in all caps. Protocol. I didn't open it right away. The first few days passed in routine. I followed the checklist they'd emailed me. Power systems, fuel levels, food inventory, and antenna calibration. Most of the work was maintenance. Checking gauges, logging signal strengths, and keeping an eye on the output from the central relay. The tower transmitted once a day at 19 o'clock. I was told not to interfere, just observe, record the signal pattern, and note any anomalies. Once every 3 days, I checked in by radio with the base operator, who never gave their name, just a call sign and a time slot. My free time didn't pass at all. There was no internet, no screens, except for the little green monitors on the signal console, and no outside noise, unless you counted the wind. It felt like being buried in snow while still breathing. At night, I read old technical manuals, played solitaire with a better deck I found in a drawer, or stared out the narrow window at the sky. The stars up here didn't twinkle. They just watched. My sleep schedule unraveled quickly. Time lost shape. The sun dragged itself across the horizon like a dying thing, never rising fully, never setting, just circling, dim and swollen, like it was trying to remember how to be the sun. And by the 4th day, I stopped wearing my watch. I finally opened the binder on the 5th day. The first half was exactly what I expected. Line diagrams, transmission frequencies, backup protocols, and warning systems. Someone had marked it up with neat, efficient handwriting over the years. There was comfort in that, a kind of quiet lineage. People had been here before me. People had followed the same steps. But tucked between 2 dry appendices was a separate dog-eared section, labeled in a different hand. Special Protocols, Station 126B. It listed 7 rules. No header, no author, just 1. Do not use the radio except during scheduled check-ins. 2. Never respond to unscheduled transmissions. 3. If you hear your own voice from the radio, do not reply. 4. Do not look at the relay tower during signal dispersal. 5. Keep the hatch locked after sundown. 6. Do not open the door during a whiteout, even if someone knocks. 7. Do not leave the station between 2:13 and 3:13. I read them once, then again. There was no explanation, no warning, no indication if these were serious or just a tired joke passed down from the last guy. Still, I copied them down onto a note and pinned it above the desk. Not because I believed them, just because it felt wrong not to. The 7th day was colder than the others. A high wind moved in, and the temperature dropped fast enough to freeze the moisture in my breath mid-air. I logged my daily report, restocked the heating chamber with fuel cells, and drank instant coffee in silence, while the relay tower did its 19 o'clock dispersal routine. I could hear it hum from the station, a deep, low resonance that rattled in the steel bones of the place. Not a sound you could mistake for anything else, not like a radio or a broadcast, or even a generator. It felt deeper, older, like the sound of the earth shifting under ice. I didn't look out the window. I didn't even try. Something about the sound made me sit still, my fingers curled tightly around the cup, heart thudding faster than it needed to. And when the humming stopped, I exhaled and stood. Business as usual, just following the protocol. The next morning, I noticed frost patterns on the inside of the window glass, loops and spirals like fingerprints, but longer, more delicate. I pressed my hand to the window and left a clear smudge in the center of the design. Then I wiped it away. Didn't think anything of it. At least, not then. But I kept the binder on the desk that day, open to the last page, just in case. It's strange how quickly a place like this becomes your whole world. By the second week, I had slipped into a kind of rhythm. Not routine, not exactly, but a pattern. Like the way a snowdrift forms the same curve, no matter how the wind moves. I would wake, heat coffee over the small burner, scribble down the previous night's temperatures, and check the tower's systems. After that, I would walk the station's narrow length, inspecting panels, wires and joints. In the evenings, I would sit by the porthole and try to read. The books left behind were dry, almost deliberately so. Technical manuals, geological surveys, even a dog-eared guide to proper hand signal communication in high winds. But no fiction, no magazines, nothing with people in it. There were no clocks in the station apart from my watch, which I had stopped wearing somewhere around day 10. It made time feel strange, less measured, more ambient. Hours came and went like weather. Pale light filtered in and out. Meals happened when I remembered them. Sleep became suggestion more than schedule. And yet, the tower never changed. At 19 o'clock each day, without fail, the red light blinked on, and the structure let out its low resonant hum, deep and slow, like the last breath of a sleeping god. The vibrations would rattle lightly in the cup on the counter. The walls would sigh, and then, just as reliably, it would stop. After the first few days, I no longer stood by the window when it began. I told myself it was out of respect for the equipment. The rules stayed pinned above the desk, right where I left them. They had become background, not quite comforting, but familiar. Something to glance at while writing a note or sipping coffee. A talisman. Their odd phrasing no longer stood out the way it had when I first arrived. I didn't follow them superstitiously. I followed them the way you obey instinct, the way you avoid deep water, even if you can swim, the way you don't reach into holes in the ground. It was somewhere around day 14 that I noticed something unusual. It was a sound, faint but insistent, just beneath the station's usual mechanical murmurs. It wasn't a bang, nor was it a creak. It sounded like murmuring, a shiver of static that seemed to come from the air itself. I paused mid-log entry, tilted my head, and held my breath. The sound wasn't constant. It would rise and fall like a tide. Not language, not music, just a shape made out of sound. It felt like a conversation happening in the next room. except there was no next room. I stood in the middle of the floor and turned slowly, but the sound didn't change. And after a while, it stopped completely. I waited a little longer, but it didn't come back. So I went back to my notes, tried to forget about it. Day 17 brought the first real disruption. The radio, which had remained silent except during check-ins, flared to life on its own, just past 16 o'clock. I was in the back corner organizing fuel canisters when it crackled into static, sharp and sudden, like a slap. I froze. It wasn't the usual analog hiss. It had texture, like breathing, only wet and irregular. The sound would pulse, then dip, like something struggling to form syllables. I didn't approach. Instead, I stood beside the cot, back straight, eyes locked onto the panel. I waited a full minute. Then I walked to the desk, shut the unit off, and unplugged it entirely from the wall. I stood in the quiet for another 30 seconds, then turned to make tea. The radio came back on. No flicker, no warm-up, just click, then static. Same frequency, same unnatural rhythm. I didn't touch it again. I didn't write it down. The check-in that evening was different. I reported the usual. Dispersal complete, tower output steady, no anomalies observed. I didn't mention the spiral, or the sound, or the radio. There was a pause after I finished. Then the operator's voice returned, slower than usual. "Are you alone?" The question surprised me. It wasn't protocol. Yes, I said. There was another pause. "Have you opened the door at night?" "No." "Have you looked at the light?" The hair on my arms rose. "No," I said again. Silence. Then the faintest sound, static but softer, higher. A voice was within it, shaped like my own. "Are you sure?" The line cut. The generator whined that night, the pitch higher than usual. I wrote it off as temperature variance, but the hum stayed with me, behind the walls, like a low insect noise that wouldn't stop. I barely slept. On day 19, I opened the logbook and found something I hadn't written. It was a single line, added below the previous day's dispersal report. The text was written in ink, not pencil. "You are not alone in here." The words were shaky, uneven. The tail of the E in here looped twice, as if the pen had lingered there longer than it should have. But there was no pen in the station, only pencils. I closed the book and didn't open it again that day. The frost spiral on the window had grown by the next morning. It now spread beyond the porthole, curving down the metal wall, faint and uneven, as though fingers or something like fingers had dragged the shape into the steel itself. I pressed my hand to it. It was cold, but not colder than the rest of the wall. I stood there for a while, palm flat, waiting for something I couldn't name. When nothing happened, I stepped back and sat down, watching the light dim behind the frost. That night, I dreamed of the tower. Only it wasn't outside. It was inside the station, twisted into the back wall, ribs arced and glowing faintly. The tower hummed as always, but the hum was no longer mechanical. It had rhythm. It spoke, not in words, but in pulses, signals. The message repeated over and over.
You are not in the station. You are inside the signal.
I woke with the taste of metal in my mouth, and the spiral traced in frost on the ceiling. I don't know how long it's been since the last check-in. After that final transmission, the one where I heard my own voice asking, "Are you sure?" I stopped using the radio. I didn't unplug it again. I just left it sitting there, mute and waiting, like a mouth closed over something too large to swallow. And I haven't heard from Control since. There was no confirmation, no status request, no copy that. It's as if the station itself fell off their grid. Or maybe I did. Outside, the light barely changes. I might be sleeping during the day now, or not sleeping at all. It's hard to say. Even my own reflection has started to look unfamiliar, a little looser around the eyes, like the image in the mirror was drawn from memory and not sight. The spiral has never left. It's everywhere now, always faint, always just out of focus, but there. Condensations on the pipes, patterns in the dishwater, lines of frost curling around the light switch. They're never blatant and always peripheral. I just try not to acknowledge it. It makes things easier. But sometimes, if I glance sideways or blink too slow, I swear it pulses, like it's breathing, like it's watching to see whether I've noticed it yet. The hum has changed too. It used to come only at dispersal, that heavy resonant thrum as the tower releases its nightly output. But now I feel it through the floorboards at odd hours. Sometimes just a flicker. Other times it goes on for minutes, vibrating low in the bones. Once I thought it was the heating unit kicking on, but the heater had been off for hours. I even checked it twice. And the second time I checked it, the dial had already been turned back. I hadn't touched it. I don't remember falling asleep that night. But I do remember the dream. The same dream as before. It was only deeper, inside the station, but the walls were gone. I was standing in the center of the room, and the entire structure had been hollowed into a shape of a greater spiral. There was no floor or a ceiling, just layers of slowly circling metal and light, turning in impossible directions. The tower wasn't outside. The tower was inside the station again, and the station was inside of me. The hum filled everything. Then this message came again. Not words, not quite sound.
You are not in the station. You are inside the signal.
I woke up with my hand pressed to the wall. It was warm, and I wasn't alone. I didn't see anything. No figure, no shadow, nothing I could really name. But I felt it, behind me, just beyond the edge of attention. It didn't feel hostile. It just felt near, like someone watching you sleep. And that morning, I finally reopened the logbook. It was the first time in days. There were new entries I hadn't written. Night, clear sky, though unfamiliar stars. Light distorted through frost. Frost spiral, now visible on inside of eyelids when I blink. Tower remains unchanged in form, but appears larger than before. No signal on the radio, but I no longer trust its silence. Below that, there was another line, not in my handwriting. It was written in the same script that wrote, "You are not alone in here." Only this one read, "The tower remembers." I left the hatch locked for as long as I could, but the need to look, to see if the tower was truly growing, or if I was shrinking, became too loud, like an itch under the skin. So, one night, during what might have been dispersal hour, I opened it. The cold hit immediately. Not wind or ice, just a depth, like standing at the lip of a well. The sky was darker than it should have been. The stars were wrong. They bent too close. And the tower, it loomed. Same structure, same red beacon at the top. But it looked different now. It looked elongated. A spiral stacked in shapes that defied how steel should fold. Its base stretched farther than before, too wide for the foundation I remembered. And the red light didn't blink anymore. It spun, not like a siren, not fast, slow, methodical, turning once every few seconds, like a lighthouse that didn't care what it saw. I should have looked away, but I didn't. And when I stared into that spinning light, I didn't see a bulb or a lens. I saw an eye. It wasn't open, and it wasn't blinking. It was just present, seeing through me, into me, past me. That was 3 sleeps ago. I haven't opened the hatch since. I don't need to anymore. The spiral is here now. Not just on the walls. It's in the light fixtures, in the wiring, in the shape of the breath I see when I exhale. And I think it's inside of me too. The radio comes on without warning. Sometimes my own voice is there, looped in fragments. All clear, dispersal nominal, spiral pattern intensifying. No immediate threat. No immediate threat. Other times, it's no voice I recognize. And on some occasions, it's no voice at all. Just breathing. Rhythmic. Too slow to be human. I tried to write a final report. Tried to log everything, the way I was trained to. But I couldn't find the words. Only curves. I filled 6 pages with a single spiraling line. Even I didn't mean to. It just happened. The pencil moved on its own, and I let it move. It felt right. The station still hums every night. I still feel it in my teeth. But I don't dread it now. I understand, I think. The tower doesn't transmit information. It transmits presence. It isn't sending signals. It's dispersing self. And I was never here to monitor it. I was here to become part of it. Now that I have learned how to listen, it's learning how to speak through me. They will eventually send someone else, and they will find the hatch locked, the logbook waiting, the spiral carved into the glass of the porthole, and the rules will still be pinned to the wall. But they will mean something different now. They are not warnings anymore. They are instructions for how to dissolve quietly.